The red dust of Zirion Prime swirled around Captain Jake Harrison as he stepped carefully through the battlefield. Bodies lay scattered across the rocky ground, some human-sized, others much larger. The air smelled of burned metal and something else he could not name. His boots crunched on broken glass from shattered weapons. Jake held his rifle ready but kept it pointed down. He was not here to fight. The human ship New Horizon had come to this planet to make peace, not war. But the two alien races fighting here had torn each other apart before any human could speak to them. "Captain, we should go back," said Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez, his voice tight with worry. "This place gives me the creeps." Jake nodded but did not turn around. Something caught his eye near a pile of twisted metal that used to be a vehicle. He walked closer, his team of 4 soldiers following behind him. As they got nearer, Jake saw what had drawn his attention. A massive figure lay against the wreckage. At first Jake thought it was dead like all the others, but then he saw the chest rise and fall just barely. The being was clearly female, with long silver hair matted with blue blood. Her skin was pale blue-white, and she stood at least 7 feet tall even lying down. Her armor was like nothing Jake had ever seen. It looked almost alive, with glowing lines that pulsed weakly like a dying heartbeat. Parts of it were cracked and smoking. One of her arms hung at a strange angle, and there was a deep gash across her forehead. "Holy hell," whispered Sergeant Lisa Carter. "Is that one of those Catherian warriors we heard about?" Jake knelt down beside the alien woman. Up close he could see her face was strong and proud, even in unconsciousness. Her breathing was getting weaker. Without thinking, he pulled out his medical kit. "Sir, what are you doing?" Ben asked. "We don't know anything about her biology. She could be dangerous." "She's dying," Jake said simply. He opened his kit and pulled out a basic field bandage. "I'm not going to stand here and watch." Jake pressed the bandage against the worst wound on her head. The blue blood soaked through quickly, but the bleeding slowed. He used another bandage, on a cut on her arm. It was not much, but it might buy her some time. The alien woman's eyes suddenly snapped open. They were bright gold like molten metal. She stared at Jake with confusion and something that might have been fear. She tried to sit up but fell back with a groan that sounded like grinding stone. She spoke in a language Jake did not understand. Her voice was deep and musical, even weakened as she was. She looked at the bandages on her wounds, then back at Jake. Her golden eyes went wide with shock. "Easy," Jake said softly, the way he might talk to a scared animal. "You're hurt." "I'm trying to help." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke again, and this time Jake's universal translator caught enough to make sense of it. "Why?" she asked. "Why help enemy?" "You're not my enemy," Jake replied. "I don't even know who you are." Before she could answer, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed across the battlefield. Jake looked up to see a group of soldiers in black armor moving toward them. They carried weapons that hummed with energy, and their helmets hid their faces. "Completely, Mordak Patrol," the alien woman whispered. "They come to finish survivors." Jake did not need a translator to understand the fear in her voice. He looked at his team. Ben and Lisa were already raising their rifles. The other 2 soldiers, Danny Kim and Pete Wilson, spread out to get better positions. "There are too many of them," Ben said quietly. "Maybe 20, and they have better weapons than us." Jake looked down at the wounded alien woman. She was trying to reach for a weapon, but her broken arm would not work. Her face was tight with pain and frustration. "Can you walk?" Jake asked her. She shook her head. "Leave me, save yourselves." Jake almost laughed. Here was this warrior woman, easily twice his size and probably 10 times stronger when healthy, telling him to abandon her. It went against everything he believed in. "That's not happening," he said. He slipped his arms under her shoulders. "Ben, help me get her up." "Sir, she must weigh 300 pounds, Ben protested. "Then we better get moving fast," Jake replied. With Ben's help, Jake managed to get the alien woman to her feet. She leaned heavily on both humans, her breathing ragged. The Mordak soldiers were getting closer, their black armor glinting in the red sunlight. "Lisa, Danny, give us covering fire," Jake ordered. Pete, call the ship and tell them we need an emergency pickup. The next few minutes were chaos. Laser blasts flew over their heads as Lisa and Danny fired at the approaching soldiers. Jake and Ben half-carried, half-dragged the alien woman toward a rocky outcrop that might give them shelter. She was even heavier than Ben had guessed, and Jake's back screamed with the effort. Pete's voice crackled over the radio. Pickup is coming, but it will take 5 minutes. 5 minutes might as well have been 5 hours. The Mordak soldiers were closing in, and Jake's team was running low on ammunition. The alien woman tried to help, but she could barely stand. Then she did something unexpected. She began to sing. It was not a song like anything Jake had ever heard. It was deep and strange and seemed to come from somewhere inside her chest. The lorim sound made the hair on his arms stand up. The effect on the Mordak soldiers was immediate. They stopped advancing and looked around in confusion. Some of them actually stepped backward. War song, the alien woman explained between labored breaths. They think Catherian army comes. Jake grinned. It was a bluff, but a good one. Keep singing, he told her. She did, her voice growing stronger despite her injuries. The Mordak soldiers hesitated, clearly unsure what to do. That hesitation saved all their lives. The pickup ship arrived with a roar of engines, its guns blazing. The Mordak soldiers scattered, and Jake's team rushed aboard with their unexpected passenger. As the ship lifted off, Jake looked down at the alien woman lying on a medical stretcher. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked at him with those golden eyes, and for the first time he saw something like respect in them. "Zara Veltar," she said, "commander of the 3rd Catherian Battle Group." She paused, then added quietly, "Who are you, small warrior?" "Jake Harrison," he replied. "And I'm not a warrior. I'm just a guy trying to do the right thing." Zara stared at him as if he had said something impossible. On her world, Jake would learn later, there was no difference between the two. The colony of Haven's Rest looked like a war zone when the New Horizon arrived. Smoke rose from burning buildings, and laser fire lit up the darkening sky. Jake stood on the bridge watching the destruction through the main viewer, his hands clenched into fists. "How many people live down there?" he asked. "About 3,000, Ben Rodriguez replied, reading from his scanner. "Most of them are hiding in underground shelters, but the defenses won't hold much longer." Zara studied the tactical display with the eye of an experienced warrior. The attackers were Mordak forces, the same black-armored soldiers who had tried to finish her on Zerion Prime. They had surrounded the colony with heavy weapons and were slowly breaking through the outer barriers. "They are not trying to destroy the colony quickly," she observed. "They want the people alive, probably for slaves or prisoners." Jake's jaw tightened. "Not if we have anything to say about it." He turned to his crew. "Ben, take us down to landing zone 3. It's outside their perimeter. Lisa, get our weapons ready. Danny, Pete, prep the emergency supplies." "Sir," Ben said carefully, "we only have basic defensive weapons. Those Mordak ships have military-grade firepower." "Then we'll have to be smarter than them," Jake replied. He looked at Zara. "What do you think? Can we break their siege?" Zara studied the display again. The Mordak forces were positioned well, but they had made one mistake. They expected a direct assault, the kind of honorable battle that Catherians would fight. But humans, she was learning, did not always fight with honor. They fought to win. "There is a way," she said slowly, "but it requires trickery, not strength." Jake smiled grimly. "I'm listening." 20 minutes later, Jake crept through the colony's maintenance tunnels with a small team. Above them, they could hear the sound of Mordak boots patrolling the streets. The tunnels were narrow and dark, barely wide enough for normal humans. Zara had to stay behind because she was too large to fit. Instead, she waited in the colony's main shelter with Governor Lisa Martinez and the other survivors. The governor was a tough woman in her 50s who had been holding her people together through 3 days of siege. "I don't understand," Governor Martinez said, looking at Zara with suspicious eyes. "Why would a Catherian help us?" "Because Captain Harrison saved my life," Zara replied simply. "And that's enough?" One human saves you, so you help all humans. Zara thought about the question. 3 weeks ago, the answer would have been no. Catherians helped their own kind and no one else. But sitting in this shelter, surrounded by frightened families and crying children, she felt something different. Jake, Harrison showed me that strength is not just about fighting, she said finally. Sometimes it is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Before the governor could reply, explosions began echoing through the tunnel system. Jake's plan was working. Using the colony's mining equipment, his team was setting off controlled blasts that made it sound like a large army was attacking from underground. The Mordak forces reacted exactly as expected. They pulled back from the shelter entrances to deal with what they thought was a major assault. That gave Zara the opening she needed. She burst from the shelter entrance like a living weapon. Her armor, now fully repaired, gleamed in the firelight. The energy sword in her hand cut through the first Mordak soldier before he could raise his weapon. The colonists who followed her were not trained fighters, but they were desperate to protect their homes. Armed with mining tools and hunting rifles, they fought with a fury that surprised even Zara. But the battle was not going well. The Mordaks had too many soldiers and better weapons. Zara found herself separated from the main group, fighting her way through a squad of enemy troops near the colony's power station. That was when she heard Jake's voice over the radio. Zara, I'm pinned down near the school. There are kids trapped inside and I can't get to them. Zara looked around. She was needed here fighting these soldiers, but Jake was in danger and innocent children were trapped. The choice should have been simple for a Catherian warrior. Complete the mission. Win the battle. Individual lives did not matter compared to victory. Instead, she found herself running toward the school. She arrived to find Jake crouched behind an overturned vehicle, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. 3 Mordak soldiers were advancing on his position, their weapons charging for a killing shot. Zara hit them like a thunderbolt. Her sword took the first one's head off. Her armored fist caved in the second one's chest. The third managed to fire once before she grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "Jake," she called out, dropping the dead soldier. "Are you hurt?" "Nothing serious," he replied, standing up slowly. "But we need to get those kids out of there." They worked together to break down the school's back door. Inside, they found a teacher named Carol Adams huddling with 8 young children in a supply closet. The children were terrified, crying and shaking. Jake knelt down to their level. "Hey there," he said gently. "We're here to take you somewhere. Safe." One little girl, maybe 6 years old, looked up at Zara with wide eyes. "Are you a giant?" she asked. Zara did not know how to talk to children. Catherian young ones were raised by professional trainers, not their parents. But something about the girl's innocent question made her smile. "I am a warrior," she said carefully, "and I am here to protect you." The girl nodded solemnly and took Zara's massive hand in her tiny one. "Okay." Getting the children to safety required moving through streets full of enemy soldiers. Jake led the way, using his knowledge of the colony's layout to find hidden paths. Zara brought up the rear, ready to fight anyone who threatened their small group. They were almost to the shelter when a Mordak patrol spotted them. Jake pushed the children toward the entrance while Zara turned to face the enemy. There were 6 soldiers, all armed with heavy weapons. She could have fought them and probably won. But the children were too close. Any stray shots might hit them. Instead, she did something that would have horrified her Catherian trainers. She used herself as a shield. Zara spread her arms wide and stood directly between the soldiers and the fleeing children. The enemy weapons fired, and she felt the impacts against her armor. The energy blasts were powerful enough to crack the protective plating, but she did not move. "Run," she told Jake, her voice strained with pain. But Jake did not run. Instead, he appeared beside her with a mining laser he had grabbed from somewhere. Together, they held the line until the children were safe. Later, after the battle was won and the Mordak forces had retreated, Zara sat in the colony's medical center, having her armor repaired. Jake found her there, a bandage wrapped around his head. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for saving those kids." Zara looked at him with confusion. I was only doing my duty. No, Jake replied. Duty would have been completing the mission. What you did was something else entirely. What? Jake smiled. You chose love over duty. You risked everything to protect innocent people you had never met before. Zara thought about his words. He was right. She had made a choice that no Catherian warrior should make. She had put individual lives ahead of victory. But looking at Jake's grateful face and remembering the little girl's trusting hand in hers, she knew she would make the same choice again. Is that what makes humans strong? She asked. This love you speak of? It's part of it, Jake said. The willingness to sacrifice for others, even strangers. The refusal to abandon those who need help. Zara nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand that everything she had been taught about strength was incomplete. Physical power was important, but it was not the only kind of strength that mattered. For the first time in her life, she wondered what other lessons her people had gotten wrong. Zara Veltar sat on the edge of the medical bed, staring at her hands. 3 days had passed since the human named Jake Harrison had saved her life. Her wounds were healing well thanks to the ship's medical equipment, but something inside her felt broken in a way that had nothing to do with injuries. She was a Catherian warrior. Her people were the strongest fighters in the galaxy. They did not get rescued by others, especially not by humans. Humans were small and weak, with soft skin and fragile bones. Yet one of them had risked his life to save hers. Jake walked into the medical bay carrying a tray of food. He did this twice a day, bringing her meals and checking on her recovery. It made no sense to Zara. On her world, servants brought food to warriors. But Jake was the captain of this ship, the leader of these humans. How are you feeling today? Jake asked, setting the tray on a small table beside her bed. Zara looked at the food. It was nothing like Catherian cuisine, but it tasted better than the military rations she was used to. My body heals, she said carefully. Her English was getting better each day. But I do not understand you, Jake Harrison. Jake pulled up a chair and sat down. He was so small compared to her, barely reaching her shoulder even when she was sitting. Yet he showed no fear of her, even though she could break him in half without effort. What don't you understand? He asked. Why did you save me? The question had been eating at her for days. Your people gained nothing. You risked your lives for a stranger. Jake was quiet for a moment. Because it was the right thing to do, he said finally. You were hurt and alone. Anyone would have done the same. Zara shook her head. No, Catherians would not. We are taught to die with honor, rather than accept help from those weaker than us. Weaker? Jake raised an eyebrow. Is that what you think we are? Your bodies are soft. You have no natural weapons. You cannot fight 10 enemies at once like I can. Zara gestured at her own muscled frame. How are you not weak? Jake stood up and walked to a wall panel. He pressed a button, and the room's lights dimmed to almost nothing. Then he pressed another button and the lights came back to full brightness. I can control this entire ship from this panel, he said. I can talk to people on planets hundreds of light years away. I can make food appear with the touch of a button. Are these the actions of something weak? Zara frowned. That is technology, not strength. Who do you think built the technology? Jake asked. Who designed this ship? Who figured out how to travel between the stars? The question made Zara uncomfortable. Catherians used technology, but they did not create it. They took what they needed from conquered worlds or traded for it with their strength. Before she could answer, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Harrison to the bridge, came Ben Rodriguez's voice. We have a situation. Jake sighed. I have to go. We can continue this conversation later. After he left, Zara sat alone with her thoughts. She tried to understand what was happening to her. The human had saved her life, which meant she owed him a debt. In Catherian culture, such debts were sacred. They could only be repaid with an equal act of courage and sacrifice. But how could she repay someone who claimed he wanted nothing in return? Later that day, Zara decided to explore the ship. Her injuries were mostly healed, and staying in the medical bay was driving her crazy. She walked through the corridors studying everything she saw. The humans moved differently than Catherians. They worked together on tasks, helping each other without being asked. She watched 2 crew members fix a broken door panel. One held the tools while the other worked. They talked and laughed as they did their job. On a Catherian ship, the stronger warrior would have pushed the weaker one aside and done the job alone. Cooperation was seen as weakness. Zara found herself in the ship's common area, where several crew members were eating their evening meal. They looked up when she entered, and she expected them to show fear or respect. Instead, they smiled and waved. "Hey, Zara," called Lisa Carter, the female soldier from the rescue. "Want to join us?" Zara hesitated. Warriors did not eat with common soldiers, but these humans seemed to expect it. She sat down at their table, her large frame making the chair creak. "How are you feeling?" asked Danny Kim, the young soldier who had been at the pickup. "Better," Zara replied. "Your medical equipment is very good." "Doc Martinez knows her stuff," Pete Wilson said with a grin. "She fixed up my broken leg last year. Good as new." They continued talking, including Zara in their conversation as if she had always been part of their group. They asked about her world, her people, her experiences as a warrior, but they also told her about themselves, their families, their dreams. It was the strangest thing Zara had ever experienced. These humans treated her as an equal, not as a superior or inferior being. They showed genuine interest in her thoughts and feelings. When Jake arrived for his own meal, he sat down beside her without ceremony. "I see you've met the rest of the crew," he said. "They are not what I expected," Zara admitted. "What did you expect? Fear, respect, distance." She looked around the table at the friendly faces. "Not this." Jake smiled. "This is what we call friendship. It's not based on strength or rank. It's based on mutual respect and caring." Zara had heard the word before but never truly understood it. Catherians had allies, battle partners, leaders, and followers. But friendship was something different. It was what she saw between Jake and his crew. The next morning, the ship's alarms began blaring. Zara rushed to the bridge where she found Jake and his officers studying a display screen. "What is happening?" she asked. "Distress signal," Jake replied grimly. "Human colony under attack. They're asking for help." Ben Rodriguez looked up from his console. "Sir, we're a science ship. We don't have the weapons to fight a real battle." "The colony has children," Jake said quietly. "Families. We can't just ignore their call for help." Zara stepped forward. "I can help," she said. "I know warfare. I can teach your people to fight." Jake looked at her in surprise. "You would do that, fight alongside us?" "I owe you a life debt," Zara replied. "This is how I begin to repay it." But even as she spoke the words, Zara knew they were not entirely true. The debt was part of it, but not all. These humans had shown her something she had never seen before. They cared about others, even strangers. They risked themselves for people they had never met. Jake was right. That was not weakness. It was a different kind of strength, one that Zara was only beginning to understand. "All right," Jake said, his voice firm with determination. "Set course for the colony. And Zara, we'll need to know everything you can tell us about combat tactics." As the ship changed course toward the distant colony, Zara felt something she had never experienced before. She was not just following orders or fulfilling a duty. She was choosing to fight alongside these humans because she wanted to protect them and the innocent people they were rushing to save. For a Catherian warrior, it was a revolutionary thought. News of the victory at Haven's Rest spread quickly through the galaxy. Within days, Jake found himself receiving messages from across human space. Some praised him as a hero. Others questioned why he had trusted an alien warrior. But the message that worried him most came from Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Human Defense Force. "Captain Harrison." The Admiral's stern face filled the communication screen. "You need to come to Earth immediately. We have a situation that requires your expertise. Jake looked at Zara, who stood beside him on the bridge. In the week since the battle, she had become his unofficial second-in-command. Her knowledge of alien military tactics had proven invaluable, and the crew had come to respect her completely. What kind of situation? Jake asked. The kind we cannot discuss over open channels, Admiral Sullivan replied. Just get here as fast as you can, and bring your Catherian friend. We may need her knowledge too. The journey to Earth took 3 days. During that time, Jake noticed that Zara seemed troubled. She spent hours staring out at the stars, her golden eyes distant and sad. What's wrong? He asked her one evening as they sat in the ship's observation lounge. I received a message from my people, she said quietly. They have declared me a traitor. Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Because you helped us? Because I fought alongside humans. Because I chose to protect the weak instead of conquering them. Zara's voice was bitter. Commander Thane Korvac, my former second-in-command, has told the High Council that I have forgotten my honor. Thane Korvac? The one who betrayed you on Zerion Prime? Zara nodded. He claims I am no longer fit to be a Catherian warrior. The High Council has agreed. I am now an outcast from my own people. Jake reached out and took her hand. Her skin was warm despite its alien blue color. I'm sorry, Zara. That's not fair. Fair? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Catherians do not care about fair. We care about strength and honor, and by their standards I have shown neither. Before Jake could reply, Ben Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we're approaching Earth. Admiral Sullivan is waiting for us at Defense Command. Earth looked beautiful from space, blue and white and green. Zara had never seen Jake's homeworld before, and she stared at it with wonder. It is so alive, she said softly. So many colors. Wait until you see the surface, Jake replied. It's even better down there. Defense Command was a massive building, in the heart of Geneva. Jake and Zara were escorted through security checkpoints and into a conference room where Admiral Sullivan waited with several other high-ranking officers. Captain Harrison, the Admiral said, standing to greet them. Thank you for coming so quickly. She looked at Zara with curious but respectful eyes. Commander Veltar, your reputation precedes you. I am no longer a commander, Zara replied stiffly. My people have cast me out. Their loss is our gain, Admiral Sullivan said. Please, both of you, sit down. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Jake and Zara took seats at the conference table. The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked dozens of star systems. 3 weeks ago, our intelligence networks detected unusual Mordak activity in these systems. Admiral Sullivan began. At first, we thought they were just expanding their territory, but then we discovered something disturbing. The display zoomed in on one of the red dots. It showed a planet that had once been green and blue like Earth. Now it was brown and lifeless. This is Altair 7, the Admiral continued. It was home to the Vegan Republic, a peaceful civilization of traders and artists. The Mordaks attacked 6 months ago. The planet is now dead, its people gone. Jake felt sick looking at the images. Gone? You mean evacuated? No, Admiral Sullivan said grimly. Gone. Completely. Every man, woman, and child on that planet was either killed or taken as slaves. The Mordaks strip-mined the entire world for resources. More images appeared on the display, planet after planet, all showing the same devastation. Some Jake recognized as worlds he had visited during his exploration missions. Others were unknown to him, but all had been vibrant, living worlds before the Mordaks came. How many? Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. 47 worlds. In the past year, Admiral Sullivan replied. Billions of people, and according to our intelligence, they're just getting started. The Admiral pressed another button, and the display changed to show troop movements and supply lines. The Mordaks are preparing for something big. Our analysts believe they're planning a massive invasion of human space within the next 6 months. Jake stared at the display in horror. But why? What do they want? Everything, Admiral Sullivan said. Complete domination of this galaxy. They've been working toward this goal for decades, weakening potential threats before moving in for the kill. Zara suddenly stood up, her face pale. Thane Korvac, she said. He has been meeting with Mordak representatives. I thought he was just gathering intelligence, but he was making deals, Admiral Sullivan finished. We know. Our spies have confirmed that your former second-in-command has been feeding the Mordak's information about Catherian military capabilities. That is treason, Zara said, her voice shaking with rage. The highest crime among my people. Yet the High Council listens to him instead of you, Jake observed. Why? Because he tells them what they want to hear, Zara replied bitterly. That humans are weak and unworthy of alliance. That the Catherians can remain neutral and safe, while the Mordaks destroy everyone else. Admiral Sullivan nodded. The Mordaks have been very clever. They've convinced your people that humans are the real threat to galactic peace. Meanwhile, they've been systematically destroying every other advanced civilization in this region of space. Jake studied the tactical displays. What about the other races? The Zentorians, the Rigel Confederation, the Betelgeuse Alliance? Surely they can see what's happening. Some can, Admiral Sullivan said, but they're all too weak to fight the Mordaks alone, and too suspicious of each other to form a proper alliance. The Mordaks have been playing them against each other for years. So we're alone, Jake said quietly. Not necessarily, Admiral Sullivan replied. We have a plan. It's dangerous, probably suicidal, but it might work. She activated another display, this one showing the Mordak homeworld of Thanatos. It was a dark, forbidding planet surrounded by massive orbital defenses. We need proof of the Mordak's true intentions, Admiral Sullivan explained. Something that will unite the galaxy against them. Our intelligence suggests that they keep detailed records of their conquests and future plans in their central archives on Thanatos. Jake stared at the display. You want us to break into the most heavily defended planet in Mordak space and steal their secret files? That's exactly what we want, Admiral Sullivan said. It's a job that requires both human ingenuity and Catherian combat skills. You two are the only team that might be able to pull it off. Zara looked at Jake with concern. It is a suicide mission. The Mordaks will kill us both if they catch us. Maybe, Jake replied. But if we don't try, they'll kill billions more innocent people. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I will do it. Not for my people who have cast me out. Not for honor or duty. But for the children we saved at Haven's Rest. And for all the other children who will die if we do nothing. Jake felt a strange warmth in his chest as he looked at her. Somewhere along the way, his feelings for Zara had grown beyond friendship and respect. He cared about her in a way that was deeper and more personal than he had ever felt for anyone. When do we leave? He asked Admiral Sullivan. Tomorrow, she replied. And, Captain, the fate of the galaxy may depend on your success. As they left the briefing room, Jake walked beside Zara through the corridors of Defense Command. Neither of them spoke about the mission ahead or the slim chances of survival. Instead, Jake found himself thinking about something else entirely. If they were going to die together on Thanatos, there was something he needed to tell Zara first. Something he should have said weeks ago but had been too afraid to admit, even to himself. He was in love with an alien warrior woman who had become the most important person in his life. And tomorrow they would either save the galaxy together or die trying. The stolen Mordak ship looked exactly like the real thing as it approached Thanatos. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls despite his racing heart. Beside him, Zara wore captured Mordak armor that had been modified to fit her larger frame. Remember, she said quietly, if we are caught, you are my prisoner. Mordaks respect strength, so they will believe I captured a human spy. Jake nodded. They had practiced the story during their 3-day journey to the Mordak homeworld. It was a thin cover, but it might buy them enough time to complete their mission. The planet below them was a nightmare of black metal and red fire. Massive factories, covered the surface, pumping smoke into the poisoned atmosphere. Orbital defense platforms bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Thanatos Control, this is transport vessel Dark Blade requesting permission to land, Zara spoke. Into the communicator in perfect Mordak language. State your business, Dark Blade, came the reply. Prisoner transferred to the Central Archives. I have captured a human spy with valuable intelligence. There was a pause. Then, permission granted. Proceed to Landing Bay 7. Jake let out a breath. He had not realized he was holding. The first part of their plan had worked. Now came the hard part. Landing Bay 7 was a massive chamber filled with Mordak ships and soldiers. Jake put on his best scared prisoner act as Zara marched him through the corridors. The real Mordak soldiers barely glanced at them. Prisoner transfers were routine business on Thanatos. The Central Archives building rose from the planet's surface like a black spear. Inside, they found rows upon rows of data storage units containing the records of the Mordak Empire's conquests. But they needed to find the specific files about future invasion plans. There, Zara whispered, pointing to a section marked with symbols that meant strategic operations. Jake connected his portable data unit to the storage system and began downloading everything he could find. The files were enormous, containing detailed plans for the conquest of dozens of star systems. He saw invasion schedules, troop movements, and lists of worlds marked for destruction. But the most horrifying discovery was a file labeled Final Solution. It contained the Mordak's ultimate plan to wipe out every non-Mordak species in the galaxy. Humans, Catherians, and all other races were to be completely eliminated once they had served their purpose as slaves and soldiers. Jake, Zara said urgently. Someone is coming. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Jake's data unit showed the download was only half complete, but they were out of time. He grabbed the device and followed Zara toward an emergency exit. They almost made it. Stop right there, came a voice behind them. Jake turned to see a tall Mordak officer with the rank markings of a general. Behind him stood 6 heavily armed soldiers. Well, well, the general said in accented English. The famous human Captain Harrison and the traitor Catherian Zara Veltar. Did you really think we would not notice your little charade? Zara stepped in front of Jake, her hand moving to her concealed weapon. Run, she told him quietly. I'm not leaving you, Jake replied. You must. The galaxy needs that information. The Mordak general laughed. How touching. The alien and the human united in their foolishness. You will both die here, and your precious alliance will die with you. That was when Jake realized something important. Their mission was not just about stealing files. It was about proving that different species could work together against a common enemy. Even if they died here, their story would inspire others to unite against the Mordaks. You're wrong, Jake told the general. You can kill us, but you cannot kill what we represent. Hope. Unity. The belief that good people of any species can stand together against evil. As he spoke, Jake activated his communicator and began transmitting the stolen data to every ship in the galaxy. It would take several minutes to complete, but if they could hold out that long, the truth about the Mordak plans would reach everyone. The general snarled and raised his weapon. Enough speeches. Kill them both. The battle that followed was desperate and brutal. Zara fought with all the skill of a Catherian warrior, her energy sword cutting through Mordak soldiers like wheat. Jake used every trick he knew, diving behind cover and returning fire with his smaller human weapon. But there were too many enemies, and more were coming. Jake felt a searing pain as a Mordak blast grazed his shoulder. Zara took a hit to her leg that sent her stumbling. The transmission is almost complete, Jake called out. Just a few more seconds. Zara looked at him with those golden eyes he had come to love. Jake, there is something I must tell you. Save it for later, he replied, firing at another soldier. There may not be a later. She moved closer to him, still fighting. You saved my life, but you did more than that. You showed me what it means to care for others. You taught me about love. Jake's heart stopped. Zara, I love you, Jake Harrison. she said simply. "And I am proud to die fighting beside you." Before he could respond, the Mordak general appeared behind them with a massive energy cannon. Jake saw what was about to happen and threw himself at Zara, knocking her aside just as the weapon fired. The blast hit Jake full in the chest, sending him flying across the room. He landed hard against a wall and slid to the floor, his vision going dark around the edges. "Jake!" Zara's scream of rage and grief echoed through the chamber. She charged the general with such fury that even the experienced Mordak warrior stepped back in fear. Her sword took his head off in a single swing. As Jake lay dying, he heard his communicator beep. The transmission was complete. The truth about the Mordak plans was now spreading across the galaxy. Zara knelt beside him, tears streaming down her alien face. "The data is transmitted," she whispered. "Your sacrifice will save billions." Jake smiled weakly. "Not just mine. Ours. We did this together." He reached up and touched her face. "I love you too, Zara. I should have told you sooner." "You told me with your actions," she replied. "Every day since you saved me." Jake's vision was fading, but he could hear the sound of ships approaching. Many ships. Human ships, Catherian ships, even vessels from the other alien races that had received the transmitted data. "They're coming," he whispered. "All of them. Together." Zara looked up to see the first rescue ships landing in the plaza outside. The alliance Jake had dreamed of was finally happening, united by the proof of Mordak evil and inspired by the story of a human and Catherian who had sacrificed everything for others. Jake closed his eyes, knowing that his mission was complete. But then something unexpected happened. Zara's tears falling on his wounds began to glow with a soft blue light. It was an ancient Catherian healing ability, one that only activated in response to true love. Jake's eyes opened as strength flowed back into his body. "How?" "Catherian life bonding," Zara explained, helping him sit up. "When two souls become one, healing can be shared. I did not know it was possible with humans." Outside, the first united fleet in galactic history was forming. Humans, Catherians, Centaurians, and dozens of other species had put aside their differences to face the Mordak threat. The evidence Jake and Zara had stolen made it impossible for anyone to deny the danger. As they walked to the rescue ships together, Jake realized that their mission had accomplished something even greater than saving the galaxy. They had proven that love could bridge any gap, overcome any difference, and create bonds stronger than death itself. The war against the Mordaks would be long and difficult, but for the first time, the free peoples of the galaxy would fight as one, and at the heart of that alliance would be the story of a human captain and a Catherian warrior who had found strength in each other, and hope in the belief that good people everywhere could stand together against the darkness. Their greatest adventure was just beginning.